Advocate of the High Court. Joy, how are you doing?
I'm very well and blessed. How are you, Leah?
Niko salama. Good to know you're blessed, eh?
I tell you, suna natu.
All right.
Sijakonda bado na hii corona yote.
All right, Joy, let's take a look at the dailies quickly. The front page here, the headline reads, "You are your own enemy." That's Attorney General to Maraga. This story, Joy, talking about Kihara accusing the CJ of breaking the law and playing to the public gallery, saying his personalized attacks against President are detrimental to constitutional democracy. Of course, this in relation to the appointment of the judges, which has not taken place. What do you make of these developments, considering you are an advocate of the High Court, Joy?
On this situation, I think the entire episode has been handled rather sadly. These judges were appointed, or rather they were interviewed and vetted in about 7 months ago. And so for the last 7-8 months, they have been in limbo as to whether or not they're going to be able to serve. Now, from media reports, what we do get is that there are some of the appointed, or rather nominees, who are not very, for lack of a better word, suitable for the appointment. However, the way the entire thing has been handled has been out of work. Remember, this is not the first time the Chief Justice has come out to talk about this particular issue. And this is also not the first time he has come out to address the president in the public gallery, which is something that is completely out of step, if you ask me. Because the Chief Justice, as a leader of one arm of government, ought to have a direct line to the president, who is the leader of the other arm of government, because we've got the executive, legislature, and judiciary as the three arms of government. Now, what is panning out is that clearly the three arms of government are not coordinating as well as they should. And this is something that is becoming a problem. Why is it becoming a problem? Because there are judges who have since retired in that 7 months. They have since left service. There are some courts that already had shortages. So these 41 judges are not even feeling the gap that exists. They are only for the employment court and for the environmental court. So you still haven't repopulated, for example, the High Court. You haven't repopulated the magistracy. And right now, the backlog is a pain. If you look for a date right now, if you file your matter today, you have to sue somebody because your business deal has gone wrong. You're going to be heard in 2022 at the first hearing, which is a very sad state of affairs.
You know, Joy, according to, this story is developing because we had a look at this story yesterday. And the concern, according to the failure to appoint the judges, is an issue of integrity.
Yes.
Do you think this is the case, or there's something more than what we are actually seeing right now?
Even if it is the case, because some of the nominees are already serving judges, they're being nominated for promotion, and others are the ones who are coming on. Before you take your interview, one of the things you need to get is clearance from the usual. The Chapter 6, what we have decided is Chapter 6. We've decided you have to get your help, you have to get your your good conduct, your KRA clearance, your help. And in that process, there is EACC clearance as well. So the nominees, before they even go for the interview, get clearance from various bodies. During the interview as well, those bodies are invited to make submissions to the Judicial Service Commission, such that if there's an issue of integrity, that is when it's supposed to be raised. But be that as it may, some of them are already sitting judges. If a sitting judge is found to have integrity issues, the laid down procedure for the removal of judges is very well known. So that's why I'm saying the whole matter has been handled wrongly. If the executive is very sure about these ones who need to go, they should institute, because the institutional tribunal is a matter that the president can do because he has the information. At the other hand, the Chief Justice also needs to find out, okay, so exactly where is the culling supposed to happen, so that they have an agreed and a negotiated outcome. In this particular instance, the arm twisting, the naming and shaming, the public outcry, I'm not sure it's going to achieve what the Chief Justice wants. And at the end of the day, we still have a stalemate, because from the statement from the Attorney General, the executive was not amused that There are issues that were raised that are still before the court, which of course offends the sub judice rule. But the thing is also that the executive, according to the Attorney General, that were raised that were not accurate. So it's become tit for tat. As a Kenyan, I would that everybody gets off the media. They look for each other, even if you don't like each other. Find a way of squaring this out, because the people who are paying the price are the 47 million Kenyans who are getting less than stellar judicial services.
All right, let's take a look at another story here. Page 2, Joy, the headline reads, Burundi's Nkurunziza dies of cardiac arrest. Indeed, a sad time for Burundi, because the outgoing president, Pierre Nkurunziza, died yesterday after suffering what his government said was a cardiac arrest. He was 55 at the time. And what we're seeing here is Nkurunziza was definitely set to hand over power, Joy, but this has not actually happened since he has sadly passed on.
Yeah, and our condolences to the people of Burundi. This is a difficult moment, because when you're in transition, you hope to see a colorful event. You do not want it to be under the shadow of such a dark cloud. However, you must thank God for the perfect timing, for lack of a better word, that at least there was already in place somebody else ready to take up. Because I think it would have been worse for a country that's coming out of a season of civil war and rebuilding, to have that gap of one leader has passed on and who's coming in, who's the successor. So on some level, you can see there was a level of mercy, as it were. God ensured that there was somebody already in place. But that said, the circumstances have been very unfortunate. We know that his wife is still in Nairobi receiving treatment. So it's a difficult moment, not just for the people of Burundi, but for the entire family. And our thoughts and prayers go out to them, because there's no easy way to go through this.
Yeah, indeed. And we do pray and hope that his soul rests in eternal peace.
Amen.
Well, again on page 2, there's another story here. The headline reads, Scheme to dethrone Mudavadi from ANC helm splits legislators. Joy, this story is basically talking about a political storm that is said to be brewing in Musalia Mudavadi's Amani National Congress, that's the ANC, after some party members clashed over an alleged bid to oust him. So much happening in the world of politics. Talk about now the Amani National Congress. We've moved, Jubilee, it's still going on. We're still waiting to hear about the fate of Duale. And now we're talking about Mudavadi. What do you make of these developments in the ANC?
The thing that I've learned in the last few days, if you're going to be in a political party and you want to be the party leader, make sure you own, quote unquote, the party. Because this season of coups has told us who the real owners of the parties are. Oh, actually, I'm the founder. I just allowed this guy to come and lead. And it's quite unfortunate. The thing that I think we cannot fault the political parties is they've learned from the best. They've realized that there's a moment here where, for lack of a better word, what Suvula called yesterday, fumigation is going on, as if they're vermin. But be that as it may, there seems to be a clamor to try and get things in order for moving forward, which for the Mwananchi cannot be a bad thing. If you've got strong internal party discipline, you've got robust party mechanisms, then we are likely to not end up with chama cha mama na baba. We are likely to end up with more enthusiastic leadership. Why do I say that? If you look at parties like, for example, in the West, look at Israel, for example. I mean, they changed their prime ministers. You don't do well tomorrow, you're in court, you're facing corruption charges, they have somebody else. They've gotten to a place where they're not married to the individual, they are attached to their systems and their governance. And so that makes it easy for them to say, you know what, Joy, you're no longer suitable, step aside. Leah, can you step up? It's your turn now. So I hope we get to that level where the party leader is not the be-all and the end-all. So I'm hoping that this internal party mechanisms you're seeing in Ford Kenya and in ANC are sort of developing that particular muscle. Be that as it may, the timing and the tone of it is a little bit wanting, because if there was indeed the intention to change the party leader, you would expect that it would be not exactly grassroots, but you would hear the mamas across the party that this is a need that we need to have. Right now, we've been seeing it's more boardroom deals. It's been very Machiavellian, cloak and dagger. And that's the bit now that worries me, because now that type of politics breeds distrust. So you can imagine, for example, if people decide tomorrow they're getting into a political party, you've told me, come lead my party, I have a party here, and somebody steps into my political party and offers leadership, then the day I'm tired, I just said, you know what, I still own the party, get out. It's going to breed more of the politics of we're trying to get away from, of deceit and distrust.
Yes.
So that's the bit that I wish would, as Kenyans, would just step up. But be that as it may, it can never be a bad thing when politicians don't
Joy,
sit pretty.
Further to this story, it talks about a section of legislators loyal to Mudavadi yesterday, according to this story, accused a nominated member of parliament, Godfrey Osotsi, of plotting a coup to destabilize and to disrupt independent parties in Western Kenya. On Monday, Joy, we were talking about this same story. Well, now it's a bit developed, but on Monday we were talking about the love-hate political relationship between Mudavadi and ODM party leader Raila Odinga. And the feeling was, well, according to some of the stories we looked at, is Mudavadi feels that there's an attempt by, an alleged attempt by Raila to try and create some sense of division. And the question was, what happens then to the, so to speak, the Luhya community vote that perhaps maybe Raila Odinga needs towards the 2022 general election?
That allegation has come up time and time again. And the fact that the Secretary General of ODM has felt constrained to respond to both Wetangula and Mudavadi tells me that maybe there is a grain of truth in it, because if it was completely inaccurate, to just brush it off. But the fact that you need to set the record straight tells me maybe there is something going on. The misfortune is it's politics. It's like what you saw in Jubilee. It's one of those games where interests must align, and when the interests don't align, then everything is fair game. These people were bosom buddies when they were forming CORD, and when they transitioned into NASA. They were core principles. They put in their time, their money, their energy, their names to forming the coalitions and to building something up. And now they're in a situation where there is the big fallout. So there's a big fallout in Jubilee, but also within NASA, there's been a big fallout. Wetangula and Mudavadi have come out to stand apart from what NASA ODM leader, who was the NASA principal, wants to do with moving forward with the handshake. And we have seen that right now, the buzzword in politics is you must support the handshake. If you do not support the handshake, it's out with you. So I think that maybe the persistence of insisting on standing on their own grounds may have something to do with it. But if you look at it from Wetangula's perspective and from Mudavadi's perspective, as far as they're concerned, when they were members of NASA, they felt they delivered whatever it is that they had negotiated to deliver. And they do not feel like they have to be answering to Honorable Raila still at this point in time. Like you've seen somebody like Honorable Mudavadi has been coming out very strongly as ANC party leader, issuing statements even during this corona season. You can see him definitely trying to be his own man. So you cannot underscore now what this means for the Luhya vote, because as far as the Luhya are concerned, first and foremost, I'm one of those people who don't think the Luhya vote is a slice of bread that's just waiting to be distributed amongst the people sitting at the table. People do have the right to choose. But if you look at the dynamics of politics, is that everyone has a base. And the Luhya people right now, and you're looking at the Maragoli and the Bukusus in the primary, now this is for Wetangula and Mudavadi, and you're looking now at the larger Luhya community, some of them are not too impressed, because they're saying, look, even if you need to change somebody, this public undressing, naming and shaming doesn't sit very well with the normal Mwananchi. And on the ground right now, there's a lot of murmurings and complainings, and people are waiting to see how it pans out.
All right.
The end result might be the Luhya vote may be one to play for come the next general election, because before you would have said they were solidly behind Honorable Raila, or rather almost solidly behind Honorable Raila. But right now it looks like it's fair game, actually.
All right. Well, page 5, a related story, still in the world of politics. Joy, the headline reads, Lobby says big parties stifling democracy. This story basically talking about political parties liaison committee has claimed that Jubilee Party and Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, have hatched a plot to cripple multi-party democracy. What's your take on this? Do you think this is the case?
There's been that concern with the, how do I put it, the harnessing of the energy of the political parties to be all seeming to be in government. There's a dichotomy to this. There's the dichotomy of when everybody is more or less aligned to one direction, then you make progress. If you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with people. So there is that angle of we want to cooperate. We want everybody to work together so that we all achieve the same goal. There's that angle. But at the same time, the nature of multi-party democracy is that you've got majority and minority parties who act as checks and balances against each other. Now, this has been a little bit stinted with how things have panned out over the last 3 years. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, I was watching another media station. There was the leader of minority as well as the outgoing chairman of the budget committee. Mm-hmm. And you could, they were sort of playing off each other, so to speak. So you would wonder, now, if one is supposed to be a check and a balance against the other. In fact, at some point, the leader of minority said, you know what, now maybe you can become more robust as a minority, as an opposition voice than I am. And you look at it and it's a little bit wonky. It's a little bit off. So in terms of development and moving the country forward and calming the political tensions, it has been good for the country. But in terms of developing our multi-party muscle, it has not been very good, because even what you're seeing with the other political parties, it has taken us a few steps back, where we are getting back into the political party regime of the big man syndrome rather than the ideology driving the political party. The politicians themselves are to blame for this, because they ought to be the ones who protect that space. And the fact that they're not protecting that space, it means it diminishes. So maybe we will see another clamor of real multi-party democracy moving forward. Mm-hmm. But where we are right now, it's very much personality driven. It's very much interest driven. And I think for the next 2 years, maybe like what the BBI report said, they talked about having a strong opposition. Maybe that is one of the things that we need to work towards, where we actually make it a formal institution, a leader of official opposition, so that there is no blurred lines. Everybody has got very clear-cut duties and very resourced to do that which they're there to do.
Well, it seems like on page 6, according to this story, another story here, Joy, Waiguru is not having such an easy time. The headline here reads, Waiguru ousted in drama field house session. Basically, the story talking about Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru yesterday being impeached by ward representatives in a spirited fight that had witnessed some of the spending of the night at the Assembly's chambers. Further to this story, the journey to yesterday's vote, Joy, was characterized by threats, intimidation, and the weeping of some MCAs who, however, vowed to remain focused and united until they accomplished their mission. What do you make of these developments, Joy? Now we are hearing about Waiguru and new developments as far as her position is concerned. What do you think is happening?
You remember, I think it was in April, she went to court, and the court said that, well, because of the COVID pandemic, there'll not be time to grant her a fair hearing, and so decided that, the matter must be in limbo. But what the judge did, which was curious, he declined to stop the House from hearing or proceeding with the matter, because he said that would be interfering with their independence as an assembly. And so the judge gave and took away with the same hand. He said, this is not the right time to hear this case, but he did not give a stay. And so I think that's where the MCAs took cue from the national government and are saying, if the National Assembly is meeting to deliberate with issues that they feel are urgent, we very well could do the same. Now, the problem with this, I find, is that Anne Waiguru has been one of the leading lights of the BBI movement. So by targeting her, I'm not saying that she's being targeted mainly because of her BBI. The MCAs have their own grounds and whatnot. But in the light of what the president said during the recent Madaraka Day, when he said that this is the time, is a constitutional moment. So you would imagine that BBI now is firmly back on track. So for them to go after her gives you an intrigue of, is this politically instigated? Is this something that, is there mischief? Should we be reading into what is happening in Kirinyaga? At the same time, you have to remember that this is not the final stop. Them passing the impeachment motion at the Assembly means that they need to pass the information to the Senate Speaker within the next, they have, I think, a day or two left. And then once they do that, then the Senate Speaker goes ahead to take action and move the process forward. So at the Senate, this very well could be overturned. We've seen Governor Wambora surviving the Senate, and we expect Governor Waiguru will do the same. But moving forward, how are you working with your MCAs if they won't pass your budgets, if they won't support your bills? So it's going to be a very difficult 2 years for Governor Waiguru. So she needs to be braced for that. However, I do not see this as an end for her, so I hope she did not have a sleepless night over this, but it's very bad optics. The timing is very suspect. You have to read politics into it, because why else would they be so enthusiastic as to, I think you saw some social media reports of how they even spent the night in the Assembly to ensure that nobody fails to turn up in the morning. It just looked so ridiculous. But
Joy,
it's a season. Yes?
Yeah, just finish up, Joy.
No, I'm saying it's a season of cloak and dagger politics. So what's playing out in the national now is just being devolved to the counties.
Well, just to give a bit of a background to this story, we know that according to this story, and of course some developments we've seen in the past, Joy, Waiguru has consistently been accused of issues that go as far as violating procurement laws, corruption, nepotism. And of course, she has in the past felt that perhaps there is an attempt by one of her colleagues to try and get her ousted from the particular position, accusing, of course, Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho of sponsoring her impeachment by mobilizing the said MCAs. Do you really, I've heard you say that it's not, her end is not anywhere near, perhaps, but do you think with all these allegations and what looks like a spirited fight against her, do you think she will survive it really?
I think she will, because at the Senate, you have to remember that, as I said, she is one of the leading lights of the BBI movement. And if we are firmly back on track with the BBI process, then she's one of those people who will be needed to keep doing what she has been doing, spearheading and leading the process from Mount Kenya region, because she's come up very strongly in support of Honorable Raila, and you've seen her attending almost all of the rallies that were there prior to the big shutdown. But it's in the interests of the people of Kirinyaga right now to maintain a sort of even keel. Because what we have seen happening in Nairobi, what we have seen happening in Kiambu, what we have seen even with Governor Wambora in his first term fighting these constant battles, the people who suffer is the Mwananchi, because it retards the development of the region. Now, you've mentioned that there might be there might be the interest of 2022 at play here. Remember, most governors are facing a very difficult time because of, I know the president has said, let there be no politics until 2022. But truth be told, everybody is playing politics for 2022, especially the ones who are interested. So, for example, you have this happening in Kirinyaga. Over the weekend, we also saw the drama that happened in Meru with Governor Kiraito and the women rep there. Even there's women rep Ngirishi in Kirinyaga as well. So the politics of 2022 are very much alive. And I think it's because people have realized the office of governor is a very powerful office. And it's an office that carries a lot of influence. And many of our career civil servants see it as a self-actualization. After you have served your country faithfully in the civil service, for example, we have Governor Kimemia. You have people who have served in the civil service and now want to try their hands in public service.
Okay.
Yes, in public service. So that dichotomy cannot be excluded and cannot be ignored in actual fact. So 2022 is definitely at play here.
Well, away from the world of politics, Joy, when you look at page 3 here, there's an interesting story. I don't know how you'll find it, but I think it's very funny. So this one, the headline reads, "Horrific wedding stories that are stranger than fiction." Can I share with you some?
Please do. That one I haven't seen.
So there's this story. Let me just give you, I'll give you like maybe 2. So one says, "Wedding called off after parents of bride and groom eloped."
Yeah?
Wedding called off after parents of bride and groom eloped. So this story...
Is that Kenyan though? No, I don't.
No, it's not Kenyan, of course.
Thank you, Jesus.
Most of this stuff doesn't happen here. But anyway, let's move away from that. You've heard what I've just said. So let me give you another one. I think they're really funny. So another one here, "Groom leaves bride at petrol station, drives 200 kilometers unaware he was alone." How is that possible?
They must
Is
have
that
been
even
having
love?
a big fight.
Does that
They
get
must
me
have
love?
been having... No. I'll tell you something. I will tell you something. As a person who has been married for almost 2 decades now, one of the things that I've realized is there are times when you can be together and apart. You're in the same room, but you're not talking to each other. You're not looking at each other. You are not. You are coexisting in the same space, but trying to be away from each other. So it's possible. Maybe they are not talking to each other, and he was assuming she sat at the back and she's sulking. But 200 kilometers, that's far.
So can you imagine? So this German man drove away from a petrol station after filling up, unwittingly abandoning his new wife who was in the bathroom. So he literally forgot. How is that possible anyway?
That is such a rocky start.
Then a last one here. So a man misses his own wedding after drunk driving arrest. But this seems, this could possibly happen here, right?
That has happened here. I've known, there's a couple I know. It wasn't drunk driving, but the gentleman, the day before the wedding, on his way home, he was waylaid by thugs and was beaten, and he ended up being taken to hospital. So he did not turn up for his wedding, and people are not too sure where he was. Wow. And by the time he did turn up, of course, he looked like he had been in a fight. And it caused a hula baloo. They ended up having the wedding anyway, but the first few moments, and it was the days before mobile phones. So before people figured out what had happened, they imagined that he had left her at the altar, and it was a very teary
I'm sure the
morning.
bride must have been very devastated.
Oh, the bride was beside herself. But he somehow got himself discharged from hospital and managed to come to the church by like 2 o'clock with explanations of, I'm sorry. It was such drama.
Well, I hope he was forgiven. Well, Joy, you know what? It's always
together.
It's always a pleasure to have you on this show, Joy. Joy Mdivo.
Thank you for having me as
Advocate
well.
of the High Court. Thank you for making time this morning.
Asante sana.
Well, that has been a look at the dailies today with Joy Mdivo, who is an advocate of the High Court, helping us understand especially stories making headlines in the political scene. Right now, though, I want us to take a short break, and when we return, we take a look at other stories that are making headlines. Of course, just keeping you updated on what's happening around you and, of course, around the world. So don't go too far. The Morning Cafe will be back shortly. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe. Right now, I want us to take a look at stories making headlines, of course, just to help you understand what's happening around the country and, of course, regionally and globally, of course. So we begin with this story where embattled Kirinyaga Governor Anne Mumbi Waiguru was yesterday afternoon impeached after 23 members of the County Assembly voted in favor of the motion tabled and debated before the County Assembly. The MCAs accused Governor Waiguru of abuse of office, among other charges, as our reporter Mwangi Maina tells us.
Has met the 2/3 requirement to decide on this question. The ayes have it.
With this pronouncement from the Kirinyaga County Speaker Anthony Gathumbe, Governor Anne Waiguru stands impeached after 23 members of the County Assembly voted in favor of the motion tabled by Mutera Ward Representative David Kinyua Wangoi. 4 MCAs dissented while 6 others snubbed the sitting. The County Assembly has 33 members. Governor Waiguru is accused of a series of wrongs, including deliberately failing to submit county plans and policies to the County Assembly for approval, irregularly awarding of tenders to her cronies, and buying a county vehicle without following the tendering process. Also, the MCAs were angry with the governor for irregularly allocating her self-impresses for trips abroad and failing to travel, and intentionally failing to issue the State of the County address, thus undermining the County Assembly's authority.
We made a conscious decision that now we are going to do our role as members of County Assembly and do literally serious oversight on all the county executive.
We have passed the voice of the residents of Kirinyaga. Since the governor came to office, much can be said about her delivery in terms of service. It's comparing all over with our people. And they have been asking us a question: what are you doing as our representative? Then we have answered their question, we have given them the answer.
The Assembly's labeled a company identified as Joames Investment Limited as a beneficiary of a tender awarded by the governor without following the due process, among other companies that the MCAs deemed unfit to be awarded county tenders.
For us, we did what we're supposed to do, with a lot of intimidation. I have 4 letters from the party. I have been intimidated in every way. I have my family which is not even living at home, but I want to tell people this is the price you pay for your people, and we are ready to pay even more for that.
Before the impeachment motion was debated, Governor Anne Waiguru had issued a statement terming the motion ill-informed and ill-timed. Governor Waiguru had obtained a court injunction barring the MCAs from debating the motion until the issues she had raised in court were heard and determined. Waiguru said she wouldn't be bullied and that the MCAs were serving the interest of a higher master outside the County Assembly. As Waiguru takes the next move, the Assembly Speaker will forward the resolutions of the House to the Senate Speaker Ken Lusaka within 2 days. Waiguru joins a list of Central Kenya governors impeached, including Kiambu's Ferdinand Waititu, Embu's Martin Wambora, Nyeri's former governor, the late Nderito Gachagua, and Muranga's Mwangi Wairia. All of them were saved by the courts and the Senate, apart from Waititu. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
And so after the MCA's impeachment of Waiguru, the County Assembly Speaker is expected to notify the Senate Speaker of the impeachment motion. Having sailed through the County Assembly, the motion to impeach Waiguru will now move to the Senate. The Senate will set up a special committee to investigate the grounds raised for the impeachment of Waiguru, or the whole House may also conduct proceedings to impeach her. Only a simple majority of 24 senators will be required to vote in favor of the motion once it will be tabled in the House. Waiguru might move to court or wait for Senate to determine her fate. Now moving on to another story here, the Attorney General Paul Kariuki has defended the President against Chief Justice David Maraga's accusations that he has been hampering the operations of the judiciary. Attorney General Paul Kihara now accuses the Chief Justice of witch hunt.
Just a day after Chief Justice David Maraga directed his fury at the President, alleging that he is frustrating the judiciary, he has received an equal measure of response from the Attorney General. The Attorney General accusing the Chief Justice of using the wrong channels to address the President instead of holding talks with the head of state.
And highly charged public attacks by the Honourable the Chief Justice have now taken a decisively personal slant.
You also know that I have, for a long time now, unsuccessfully sought an appointment to discuss this issue with you.
Maraga's fury was anchored on President Kenyatta's refusal to appoint 41 judges forwarded to him by the JSC, which is chaired by the Chief Justice, in which the Attorney General is a member. The Attorney General says there is a case in court challenging the integrity of some of the judges nominated.
His Excellency the President will not abdicate his role as head of state and government to appoint persons with a questionable record to serve the nation.
The Law Society of Kenya has joined the Chief Justice in demanding the swearing-in of the 41 judges, the society threatening to initiate the impeachment of the President. The Attorney General has retaliated that the executive is ready to work with the judiciary and warned the Chief Justice of speaking on matters already in court.
Besides that, the doctrine of sub judice and contempt of court, which the Honourable the Chief Justice may have breached by commenting on what should have been the outcomes of those pending cases, is a vital part of our constitutional architecture.
Kihara says the executive cannot receive orders from the judiciary. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
An outgoing Burundi president, Pierre Nkurunziza, has died after suffering a cardiac arrest. Burundi government says Nkurunziza was admitted to hospital on Saturday after feeling unwell. His condition improved, but on Monday he had a cardiac arrest and efforts to revive him were unsuccessful. 55-year-old Nkurunziza was in power for 15 years and was due to step down in August. His wife is a Kenyan hospital where she is undergoing treatment for COVID-19.
In a statement posted on Twitter on Tuesday, the government of Burundi announced the passing of President Pierre Nkurunziza. The statement says Nkurunziza had attended a valuable match on Saturday afternoon and was taken to hospital that evening after falling ill. Although he later appeared to recover on Sunday, his condition suddenly deteriorated on Monday morning. The 55-year-old Nkurunziza was pronounced dead at Karuzi Hospital in eastern Burundi. Nkurunziza is on record saying that there was no COVID-19 in his country and vividly disregarded all measures announced by WHO aimed at stopping the spread of COVID-19. Burundian government has announced a 7-day period of national mourning, which will commence on Tuesday and will see flag flown at half-mast. African leaders have started sending messages of condolences. Among them is President Uhuru Kenyatta, whom in his message has defined the late as an outstanding regional counterpart who worked tirelessly for the peace and stability of his country. After 15 years in power, Nkurunziza was due to be replaced in August by political ally Evariste Ndayishimiye, who won the May 20 presidential election. His controversial decision to run for a third term in 2015 was condemned by the opposition as unconstitutional and sparked mass unrest. After changing the constitution, he was able to run for a further term in last month's election, but decided to retire and was to be known as the supreme guide to patriotism. Lexi Kimani, TV47.
Thank you for that report, Lexi Kimani. Now, over 100 quarantine facilities and 50 isolation centers have so far been set up by the government as the Ministry of Health anticipates a spike in the number of coronavirus disease infections in the coming weeks. The 50 isolation centers have a total of 3,700 beds and are a part of a government initiative to scale up the mitigation of the spread of COVID-19 at community level. This as the country recorded 124 new COVID-19 cases yesterday in the past 24 hours. David Muthoka reports.
With worries of a surge in COVID-19 cases, the government is working round the clock to put up isolation centers and quarantine facilities at the sub-county level. This as the Ministry of Health officials warned that the country edges close to a coronavirus peak in coming weeks. The ongoing setup complements the yet-to-be-rolled-out home-based quarantine protocols in a bid to ease congestion within isolation centers at the national level. In Siaya, the county's 10-bed isolation center had been fully occupied by Sunday. Elsewhere in Kenyatta University Hospital, 3 beds were vacant as at Thursday last week.
There is adequate capacity, and going by the numbers of patients who are in hospital today, you can obviously say that indeed there is still capacity across the country.
This as the country on Tuesday recorded 127 new infections, bringing the total number of infections countrywide to 2,989. 54 people were discharged on Tuesday, with total recoveries scaling up to 873. Of the 127 new infections, Nairobi County leads with 62, Mombasa 34, Busia 14, with all of them being truck drivers. Machakos has 4 new infections and Bungoma 3. Kwale and Uasin Gishu counties have 1 case each. Sadly, the country has recorded 3 new fatalities, bringing the COVID-19 death toll to 88. 19 health workers are currently in isolation centers. With fears rife about a potential resurgence of COVID-19 cases in Eastleigh, which now benefits from relaxed containment measures,
it is likely to happen depending on whether those measures that have been put in place are really adhered to or not. If those measures are not adhered to, we expect, yes, that there will be an increase in number of infections.
The CAS also warning against stigma directed at those infected, saying it undermines efforts by health workers to mitigate the spread of COVID-19.
Stigma divides and turns us against each other.
A man also noting the key weapon to fighting the novel coronavirus as adherence to containment measures. Now, with the coronavirus disease already at community level, the government is in a race against time to try and set up more quarantine facilities at grassroots level. David Mudhoka, TV47, Nairobi.
A nominated Member of Parliament, Godfrey Osotsi, now says Musalia Mudavadi's term as ANC's party leader expires on Monday next week. The now troubled lawmaker is calling for grassroots polls to elect new officials. However, the party has axed him from its list of members, as Elizabeth Mutuku now tells us.
The nominated lawmaker wants the party to hold its grassroots polls by Monday, claiming Musalia Mudavadi-led office has completed its term.
On Monday, which will be 15th June 2020, the term of office of all party officials, including the party leader, will have expired.
But trouble befell him immediately, with the parties removing him from membership list. A letter from ANC's Secretary General Barak Muluka has already been received by Registrar of Political Parties ahead of a determination.
We've seen a statement by Honorable Sozi imposing himself as the Secretary General of ANC. I want to affirm here that the Secretary General of ANC is Mr. Barak Muluka. Is not Godfrey Osotsi.
Osotsi further accusing a section of party members for crafting a coalition with Deputy President William Ruto ahead of 2022 polls.
If William Ruto will help us to State House, we have no problem to join him that to talk to him that time. If Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta will be the one to help us go to State House, we have no problem. We will talk to every Kenyan. Honorable Mudavadi will talk to every Kenyan at that time of making coalitions, so that he gets a coalition that can propel him to State House.
ODM leader Raila Odinga has been accused of fueling the ongoing power scramble in Ford Kenya and ANC.
Tumechoka kila wakati kuhusishwa na shida za wanaume wengine. Tumesema wewe kama ni mwanaume na unaendesha nyumba yako, ni lazima uwe in charge ya mambo yako, sio kila wakati kulia eti mwanaume mwingine anakuharibia nyumba yako.
Mudavadi's troubles coming in a wake of supreme battles within Ford Kenya. A scramble of the Luhya votes is gaining momentum. Some leaders are now taking advantage of the disunity in the Mulembe nation. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47, Nairobi.
The Wafula Wamunyinyi-led faction in Ford Kenya has started what they term as a strategy to revive the party after dethroning Moses Wetangula as the party boss. The faction defending itself against external forces amidst power struggle at Kenya's second oldest political party. Wetangula, who was dethroned from the helm of the party, now has 6 days to file any protest against his ouster.
We shall be offending the spirit of our founding fathers if we allowed Ford Kenya to be held hostage by greed and ineptitude of the overly arrogant individual in the name of Senator Moses Wetangula. We shall not allow our party to continue being a briefcase venture that it is and hawked for profit and personal gain. Our party trades in democracy, not in gold. We must bring this trickery to an end. Senator Wetangula reigns at the helm of the party, has demonstrated poverty of leadership. His ascendancy to the position of the party leader remains the worst strategy experienced by our party since its inception.
Accusing us of being kibaraka ya mtu mwingine or a stooge of any other person trying to destabilize Western and things like that. In fact, if you bother to go to the ground in Western, you'll find the majority are very happy with what we have done.
And on to some rather sad story here. Following unprecedented killings and brutality alleged to be carried out by police in parts of Kihara and Mathare in Nairobi, a number of families of the victims are yet to come into terms with the aftermath of losing their loved ones. Hussein Moyo, the father to Yasin Moyo, who was shot dead by police at the balcony of their house in Huruma on 30th March this year, says he is yet to get justice. And as Eli Logova reports, these developments come as residents and human rights groups stage protests demanding an end to these atrocities.
Na mtoto amebidi sana ndani. Kwa hivyo tumejaribu ile tumeweza, lakini mtoto amefariki. Pole. Mtoto amefariki. Po? Nikamwambia mtoto amefariki. Mimi nikitembea nikaona ala. Nikaguza mtoto wangu, nikamguza, nikaona kweli huyu mtoto amenyamaza.
These are the painful memories left of Hussein Moyo, whose son Yasin Moyo was murdered on 30th March 2020 by police officers enforcing curfew regulations in Kihara. Yasin was shot at the balcony of their house. 13-year-old Yasin Moyo is among 95 people who have lost their lives in the hands of police officers since January of 2020. They are keen now calling for justice.
Hivi majuzi kama wiki moja imepita, tukapata ujumbe kwa simu na kwa marafiki, angalia simu, order imetoka kwa DPP. Mashirika hizo IPOL niita, wakaniambia tunakupea recommendation letter kuonyesha barua yako tumepeleka kwa DPP, hii faili yako na uko sawa. Kwa hivyo wewe ngojea ripoti wakati wote.
This happens as residents of Kihara and human rights groups stage protests calling for an end to police killings and brutality.
We want to demand the police produce the body or the person of Michael Njau. It is now 2 months. Yasin Moyo, mtoto wa miaka 13, a 13-year-old boy who would have been a KCPE candidate later this year. That boy died at the balcony of his parents' house. Innocent life matter! Innocent life matter!
Eli Logova, TV47, Nairobi.
And Modern Coast Rangers head coach Mohamed Mchula has lauded the decision by Football Kenya Federation to end the 2019-2020 National Super League season owing to the coronavirus pandemic. Julius Jume spoke to Mchula and filed the following report.
On the last day of April 2020, FKF President Nick Mwendwa broke the news on Twitter that the federation had prematurely ended the 2019-2020 NSL season amid the biting coronavirus scourge. Mwendwa, who is vying for a second term in office, posted, and I quote, "Nairobi City Stars, welcome to the Premier League. Now make haste with those great signings." A declaration that has received applause and condemnation
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe right here on TV47. Of course, now looking at matters health as always. On Wednesdays, this particular hour, we look at everything on COVID-19. This is a segment we call COVID 360, all about COVID-19. And in studio, we have Dr. Florence Namisi, who is an infectious disease specialist, here to help us understand the areas that we'll be looking at as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Dr. Florence, good to see you in studio.
Thank you.
Well, you know, Dr. Florence, there's so much, demystifying we need to do as far as some of the myths that pertain COVID-19 are concerned. Of course, looking at how to handle masks and, of course, how to boost your immunity, especially after recovering, noting that we've had some few recovery cases as far as what the government has been telling us. And Dr. Florence, I want us to begin by looking at the use of masks. What is the proper use of masks? And I'd like to hear from you. When it comes to using masks, what's the proper way?
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me to your studios. And you know, it has rained out there. Yeah, but I'm glad I'm here somehow. Now, when it comes to the use of masks, I think a lot of us have made observations, and probably that's the reason you're asking. When you're walking around on the streets, you see people wearing masks, all sorts of manners.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, they are wearing it on their chins. Others are covering the mouth only, while others are putting it on the proper way. But the proper way of putting on a mask is to ensure that it actually covers your nose and your mouth, because those are the two areas where we expect the droplets to get in, to gain access to your body. So a properly worn mask must cover the nose and also cover the mouth. So ideally you should breathe through the mask, not over the mask. Yeah, a lot of people also, when they are talking, they actually lower the mask to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether people are convinced that the sound cannot get out through the mask. I'm not so sure, but that's I've observed. When someone is about to speak, they actually lower the mask. So make sure the mask covers the nose and it also covers the mouth.
Well, you know, like what you've mentioned, the culture is now becoming that when someone is, you wear a mask when you're not talking,
yes,
but you remove it when you're talking.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us, what's the risk, the major risk in removing your mask, especially when you're talking to someone in public?
Yes. So ideally there are two main risks. The first one is for you to remove the mask, it means you touch it. So you touch it with your hands and then you lower it. So if your hands were already infected, or your hands had any germs, or even just dust or dirt, then you contaminate your mask because you're touching the mask. Then the secondly is now you expose your face, and you're able, you expose your face, you expose your mouth, and you expose your nose. So the protection that the mask was giving you is therefore removed. And finally, you also, as you now speak, your droplets are now getting out. They're now in the air and they're able to access your audience or your listener. And so if someone is in close proximity with you, therefore you can also infect them in case you're infected. So it's not right to remove the mask.
Now, let us look at the effectiveness of masks. I know we've heard of different masks. We talk about the N95, which is seen to be a little bit more expensive. And, you know, various other masks we've seen, the surgical mask, and now the ones that people are actually doing, it's a sort of tailor-made kind of mask. You see some that are made of clothing, like, you know, kitenge, the Kenyan, the African, you know, fabric. What is the effectiveness of the various masks we are seeing people wearing at this time?
All right. I think what we've seen is masks are evolving. I think they're becoming fashionable. People are now designing them in all sorts of ways. And those are especially the fabric masks. Now, the effectiveness of the fabric mask cannot be established medically because it depends. I've seen all sorts of fabric masks, some made in a multi-layered fashion, others made with just a single layer. And again, the type of fabric is different. But I've also seen some fabric masks that are actually made into 3 layers with a filter inside. a filter in between, an absorbent layer inside, and then the fabric is put on the outside. So I think that would be more protective. Now, on the medical front, we have the two types of masks that we have in the medical field. That is the surgical mask. That is the normal mask that we use in the hospitals or in a healthcare setup when you're doing surgeries, when you're attending to just the normal patients. And it's been shown to be protective against the normal germs that we go through, the bacteria and all that. And also it prevents you from transmitting the droplets. Now we have the special type of mask, which is called the N95 mask. It's also called a respirator. Now this particular one is used for highly infectious diseases. Traditionally we've used it when we are dealing with patients with TB, tuberculosis. And right now it's the one that is recommended for use, especially for high-risk areas in the hospital. So it tends to be reserved because, one, it's very expensive. So at the same time, it's not necessary to have it when you're just dealing with routine conditions. So it's reserved for those specialists, especially if you're doing procedures that generate what they call aerosols. So that is when it is recommended that you use an N95 mask.
All right. Yeah. What do you make of some of the masks that we have, the tailor-made ones that are made of African fabric?
Yes.
And you've talked about some have the 3 layers.
Yes.
But what happens, if you don't have the ones that have the 3 layers? What's the risk at that moment?
Okay, it is recommended that we use masks. All of us should use a mask, whatever it is, even a bandana, because if in the context of COVID-19, it's been shown that droplets are actually the main way of transmission. So if you cover your mouth with whatever fabric that you're using to cover your mouth, the first thing is that it traps any droplet that comes out. And that alone it protects the environment from getting contaminated with any droplets that you have. So it's recommended. If you can be able to get that cloth mask, then it's recommended you wear it. You don't necessarily have to have the multi-layered mask. But if you're getting into an environment where you think the risk of transmission of the virus is high, like in a hospital setup or in a crowded area, then it is recommended that you obtain a surgical mask, because that has been proven to work. I'm saying this because some of the fabric masks that we are seeing are really made of thin fabric, and the quality of that fabric cannot be ascertained. And therefore, and the masks are not tested. They're not taken through the testing that is done, like by Kenya Bureau of Standards, to be ascertained that it can prevent you from getting into contact with the virus. So if you're going into a setup where you think the risk is real, I would suggest that you use a recommended surgical mask.
All right.
Yeah.
So basically, listening to what you're saying, Dr. Florence, is that all the masks have some sense of, effectiveness in the sense that they can still protect you.
Yes.
Okay. But now, I think the question has been, of course, for some, because you find people like to recycle masks. Not too long ago, we had a story that was doing rounds on social media of persons who are actually picking up masks from, the streets, going and washing them, and then giving them back to communities and selling them, even in some cases. How risky is that, reusing a mask that, someone disposed of, and then you went and washed it and then put it back on your face?
Yeah, that is really risky. Risky because you are not sure the person who used it, their level, whether they were contaminated or not, whether they were infected by COVID-19 or not. You're not sure, and therefore, at the same time, you're not sure when it was washed. Much as we have said that coronavirus is, or rather the COVID-19, is susceptible to soap, to washing with soap. Again, we are not so sure the level of washing that was done on this mask. So it is not recommended at all for us to reuse masks. Even if it's your own, ideally, like if you walked into an area which is considered infected and you're using a surgical mask, it's recommended that after a certain number of hours, then you discard the mask and you get another one, because the mask is therefore deemed to be infected. If you're using the normal cloth mask, then one, you should not share. And after certain hours of use, like 6 hours, it's recommended that you use another one and you keep that one. And once you reach home or once you're in a place where you're able to wash it, then you wash it thoroughly with soap and water, and then you can just air dry it and then you can use it. But that was your own, not one that was used by someone else. So we don't recommend that you reuse.
So you should at least change a mask after a minimum or a maximum of 6 hours. How many hours are we looking at?
Ideally, we should change masks. The surgical masks we should change after 6 hours. Yes.
How about the ones that are tailor-made with African fabric or whatever other kind of fabric?
Yes. Still, depending on your level of exposure, if you're sitting alone in a place which is not crowded, like here in your studio, and you have not been exposed to other people, you can use your mask for the whole day. But if you're walking around on the streets on a crowded area and you determine that there was a risk that you could have come into contact with droplets, then it's important that you remove your mask after 6 hours at most. Because if the longer you stay with the mask, if the mask is infected, then you risk breathing in the contaminated particles and you can get infected, yes.
And there's this speculation, maybe you can clarify for us the whole idea of prolonged use of masks or wearing, that someone can actually, maybe pass out or something like that, or oxygen levels go lower. I mean, what really is the truth as far as the prolonged use of masks is concerned?
Yeah. So this has actually been observed that there are certain masks, and especially the N95 mask that we are talking about. If you're wearing it, then you have to breathe through the mask. And that means that you're not breathing air freely like what we are used to. So for some people, there's usually reduced supply of oxygen to the lungs. Again, depending on how tight the mask is, on how thick the mask is, then the air may not be able to pass through freely. And so some people get low supply of oxygen to the lungs, and it has been observed that for some people, the lungs have even collapsed. Yeah. So, and it's for that reason that, especially for small children under the age of 2, it is not recommended for them to wear masks. Because when they start having problems with breathing, they will not be able to say. For adults, it is recommended that you wear a mask when you have the risk of transmission, but when you're just on your own, then you can remove the mask and breathe freely. Yeah, so usually you're able to determine when you're not able to breathe, when you're having reduced levels of supply of oxygen, you begin to feel that you're having a problem with your breathing, and you're able to remove your mask at that point.
Let's talk about the people who like to do some bit of jogging in the streets.
Yes.
And early in the morning, and they want to jog around the streets, and of course maybe you don't want to wear a mask because maybe you feel like you will fall short of breath. What do you take? What do you think about this particular concern? I know some people have raised it, saying, you know what, you can't expect me to be jogging in the streets and then wear my mask at the same time. I might actually pass out. I mean, what do you think about this concern?
I think that concern is valid because during exercise, your requirement for oxygen is higher than the normal times. You need to breathe in a bit faster. Your body is utilizing more oxygen. So if you are restricting that air getting into your lungs, then you get into a position where you begin to feel breathless. But at this point, what I would want to say is rather than us just stress on wearing masks, then we need to stress on the reason why we are wearing the mask. So they were wearing this mask to prevent us from getting infected or breathing in contaminated air. So as you're jogging, you're able to gauge your environment. If you're jogging on the street and you are just on your own, then you don't need to wear the mask because you're not infecting anyone and nobody is infecting you. Lately, I've been taking walks through Karura forest, and I've been seeing a lot of people streaming in there. And sometimes when you're walking in the forest, you realize that along the stretch you are just on your own. And there's a lot of nice fresh air that is coming in through the forest. At that point, I remove the mask. I don't have to wear it because I'm not infecting anybody if I have the virus, and nobody is infecting me. But if I reach a place where there are people who is a crowd, at that point I wear the mask, because you're not so sure if the air at that level is contaminated. So I think we need to concentrate more on educating people to know why they are wearing the mask, so that they are able to gauge their own level of risk wherever they are, and then they are able to know when to wear the mask and when not to wear the mask.
Well, Dr. Florence, let's move away from masks in terms of now, because you've talked about it's good to understand why you're wearing the mask and what it is for in particular. When you look at how COVID-19 affects the body organs, let's just begin by first understanding which are the organs that COVID-19 affects mainly in the body.
Okay. So COVID-19 okay, let me start with talking about coronavirus. You know, the word coronavirus has been used a lot since we encountered this disease called COVID-19. But coronaviruses are viruses that have always been here with us. The normal cold virus actually belongs to this group of viruses called coronaviruses. So the main area of body that they affect is the upper respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract consists of the nose and the throat. So most of the time, what we call homa, you know, nikona homa, I have a cold. So that usually is, and the influenza virus is a coronavirus. Now this is just a more severe variant of the influenza virus, the COVID-19 virus. And it has been shown to cause a more severe disease which goes down into the lung. Yes, and so inflammation of the lung is called pneumonia. So COVID-19 has been shown to cause a form of pneumonia. Now, before I even go there, let me clarify that out of all the people who will get infected by COVID-19, 80% of them will develop an upper respiratory tract infection, which is mild. Upper respiratory means just a sore throat going upwards to the nose, which is quite mild. So it is in around 15% of this population that we see what we define as severe illness. And these are the people who get sick and require to be treated and therefore require close medical attention. And around 55% of these will progress to critical disease. These are the people who now probably need to be in ICU, need assisted breathing, and these are the people in whom death can result. Now it is in these people, the 5%, that we see these organ failures or multi-organ involvement, and the first organ is the lung. Yeah, so when it gets a pneumonia, you get the lung involved, and therefore you can get what is called a lung collapse. So in that case, then the individual requires breathing, assisted breathing, which is basically ICU ventilator, and if this is not instituted, then death can occur. Then just next to the lungs is the heart, and the virus actually can directly affect the heart, or through the body response also can affect the heart. And so in people who had initially had a heart disease that was pre-existing, it has been shown to worsen, and then others have been shown who did not have heart disease then develop heart disease in the process of COVID-19. Another organ that has been shown is our normal, what we call the digestive tract, that is basically all the way from the mouth into the stomach going down. So people with COVID-19 have been shown to develop diarrhea, and some of them vomiting. And again, closely attached to the digestive tract is the liver. So they've also been shown to develop some form of hepatitis. That has been shown. That's not all. So sometimes you also see that people develop kidney disease, have been shown to develop kidney disease, and people with COVID-19 have been shown sometimes to require dialysis. Yes. Also, the doctors who treat the brain have also demonstrated that COVID-19 affects the brain, and therefore at that point some patients have been shown to come in with confusion, sometimes in coma, and
why? How is it that it's able to affect the brain?
Well, you know, when the virus first gets into your body, it's shown that it gets into your body through the nose and through the throat and the mouth. And therefore it multiplies initially in the throat. But after that, it will gain access to the blood vessels, and it will get into your blood. Once it's in the blood, it's able to access any organ in the body. Yeah, because you remember blood is circulating in the entire body. So the virus is able to gain access to almost any organ in the body, and that's how it will end up in the brain, it will end up in the lungs, in the heart, in the kidneys, and even in the blood vessels lower down. Yeah.
Is it true that it actually affects the toes? I've read that online. Please help us understand.
Okay.
Is it true?
Well, you've probably read it. I've not seen it myself, but what I know is COVID-19 can affect your blood vessels, and it has been shown to cause clotting of blood. And if this clot were to occur in the blood vessels on the lower extremities, then your toes will definitely get affected. Because when those clots occur, they block the blood vessels, and especially the tiny blood vessels. So an organ which was being the blood was being supplied by that vessel then gets affected. So if that happens to be your toe, then it will get affected. But most of that effect is actually what is seen in the lung, and is actually been suggested as the main cause of death, because when it happens to the lung, then an individual's lung gets destroyed and they're not able to breathe.
So help us understand as well, many of the doctors seem to be focused on treating inflammatory reactions that are triggered by the virus, and of course the capacity to cause blood clots. Why is there so much focus on the treatment of inflammatory reactions?
Okay. With every disease, there's what the doctors call in medical term we call it pathogenesis, meaning how does this disease cause illness? How does it destroy the organs? What happens exactly? Yeah. So in COVID-19, it has been shown that once the virus gets into your body, then it triggers your body to react by forming certain chemicals. And these chemicals are meant to actually neutralize the virus. They are meant to get rid of the virus. These chemicals are called cytokines. Yeah? And these cytokines is, when there's production of cytokine, that is what we call an inflammatory reaction. Yeah, an inflammatory reaction, because this reaction is supposed to, these chemicals are supposed to come back and neutralize the virus. Now, unfortunately, the virus is not standing somewhere on the roadside. It's inside a cell in your body. So for these chemicals to get rid of it, to neutralize it, it means they have to destroy the cell. Yeah, it's like if you see a thief inside a house and you want to get rid of them, you burn down the house, isn't it? Yeah. In the process, you cause a lot of destruction. So if this is the lung tissue, and these biochemicals that are called cytokines come in, then they destroy the lung tissue. Yeah, in the process of trying to destroy the virus, the lung tissue gets destroyed in that process. And when your lung tissue is destroyed, then basically your body is destroyed. You die, so you can't breathe. The lung collapses and you're not able to breathe. So a lot of medical attention has been drawn to trying to stop inflammation. Yeah, try and prevent the cytokines from being produced, so that you are able to limit the destruction of tissue organs in the process of the body's reaction to the COVID, because this has been shown to be what is actually causing death. Yeah, destruction of body tissues by body's own response. Yeah, to the virus.
And as you talk to us about how why treating the inflammatory reactions is very vital at this moment, especially like you've mentioned, if the tissues die, then the person automatically will be going towards actually dying.
Yeah.
But out of curiosity, someone is tested and they are found to be positive for COVID-19. What exactly happens? The doctors, when you're taken to the hospital, when they're trying to save your life, what actually happens?
Okay, as we have said that not everyone who tests positive for COVID-19 is going to require a doctor. Actually, I've witnessed a few of my colleagues who have gotten infected in the line of duty progress from being positive to being negative without being sick. at all, not even experiencing any symptoms. So these symptoms are occurring in a very small subset of the population that has been affected by the virus. So what the approach that doctors have taken is that when you are tested for COVID-19 and you test positive, then the doctor basically classifies you. So you can fall into one category of being asymptomatic, meaning you are positive but you're not sick. You can fall into the category of having mild illness, meaning you just have a sore throat, in which case what the doctor does is to manage that sore throat, what they call symptomatic management. We manage, if you have fever, we manage the fever. If you have a sore throat, we manage the sore throat. If you have difficulty in breathing, then in that case you require more attention, and therefore you are taken in and you're given assisted breathing. Assisted breathing can start by just being given a mask, but in the case where you are determining that a patient's lungs are now not working, they are not able to take in oxygen, they are not able to sustain, then that's a patient who needs ventilation, and that's the kind of a patient who has to be put on a ventilator and requires ICU care. So it's a continuum of care depending on the severity of the symptom that the patient has. Then of course, as we have mentioned, that other organs get affected in the process. So as the doctors are taking care of you, they are able to determine which of your organs are getting involved, and they give you care targeting those organs.
And people are actually even afraid of just being tested. We've seen that in Old Town Mombasa and various parts of the country. People shying away from getting tested. Others are said to have been, they're losing their lives right at their homes because they have declined to just come out and get tested and know their status. Tells you, of course, of the fact that people are very fearful. If you were to speak to Kenyans right now about COVID-19, to dispel their fears and make it understandable that it's a condition like any other. Of course, it has created a lot of fear. It may look like it's more severe than other viruses we've seen in the past or heard of. What would you say, Dr. Florence?
Thank you. Yeah, understandably so. We have talked so much about COVID-19. Before it came to our part of the world, we saw a lot of horror-like stories from the West, where people were dying en masse. There was a lot of death in emergency departments were being shown. And so it looked like if you get COVID, it's a death sentence. Yeah, but right now, as we have said, a lot of people who have tested positive for COVID do not even know that they're actually positive for COVID. And they actually progress from positive to being negative without being sick at all. Some of them get to know they are positive when they're already getting well. They had a mild flu-like illness. They somehow get tested and they're told that they're having COVID. Now, it's only a small set of the population that is getting this severe. As we've said, the death rate out of COVID is 2%. Yes. Of all the people who are going to catch COVID, those who are dying are around 2%. Yes. So again, the death rate is low, and the death rate is associated with risk. There are those patients who are seen to be at risk, and they have been identified. Those are over 60 years of age. Those who have some comorbidities and cardiovascular have been suggested, and because out of observations, we've seen those people who have diabetes, people who have heart disease, people who have existing kidney disease have been shown to be at higher risk of death. So these are the kind of people who I would suggest takes utmost care. But the rest of the population, I would go ahead and reassure people that this is a very highly infectious virus. Now, when we say highly infectious, does not mean it is lethal. Infectivity of a virus is just how easily is the virus passed on from one person to another. It is so easily passed on. It goes on and that's why it's coming like a wind. It's like a wave. So it looks like in the end we might all just get COVID. Yes. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, but how many of us will die? It just depends on the state of your immunity. And we have seen that a lot of people are getting COVID, and they're actually getting from positive to negative without being really that
And some even who were in a severe situation are also recovering.
And some who are in severe situation are also recovering.
Well, Dr. Florence, I want us to take a break. When we come back, we talk a little bit more about COVID-19, of course, talking about recovery cases. We've heard of them in the country. The government has talked about them. And when we return, indeed, that's what we're going to be looking at, of course, with many other issues as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So don't go too far. And indeed, by the way, if you have a question for Dr. Florence, she is willing to answer your questions. You can send in your questions through our social media platforms, that is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, also, you can send in your messages through our SMS line on your screen. And of course, as well, you can call in and be a part of this discussion. Don't go too far. The Morning Cafe COVID 360 will be back shortly. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe, and today, as always, we began this new segment where we talk about all matters COVID-19. Of course, we do know that, we don't know when COVID-19 will leave us, so it's better for us to actually take that time and understand all matters COVID-19, and of course, help us make informed decisions towards protecting ourselves and others. And we do have a guest in studio. She's called Dr. Florence Namisi, who is an infectious diseases specialist, talking to us about all matters COVID-19. I'm so happy to have you, Dr. Florence. Some of the things you've been talking to us about this morning, I mean, if you were not here, we'd probably still be very misinformed. But being able to get the right information from you is very important. And before we took a break, we were talking about recovering. You were telling us that, suspicions are everyone might actually get COVID in the end. But like you mentioned, COVID-19 is not a death sentence. We need to change that perception. So right now, let's talk about how to boost immunity after recovering. We do know that there has been a number of recovery cases reported by the government as far as the impact on COVID-19 in the country is concerned, and people who are tested positive and, having to go through certain procedures to their journey of recovery. But when you look at boosting immunity after recovering, we look at before, but boosting immunity after recovering, what's the first area that we need to look at that's the most important?
Okay. I think in all viral diseases, including COVID-19, our immunity, the status of our immune system actually determines the cause of the disease and largely the outcome of the disease. So you find that most of the viral diseases, as we have been told, do not have any medication that will get rid of the virus. Our body actually fights and gets rid of the virus. So it depends on the status of our immune system. And so it's very important that we look at how well to boost our immunity. Now, there's no magic bullet on how to boost our immunity, just the normal basics that we know about keeping our immune system boosted. Is the first thing is diet. Yeah, so a diet which is rich in fruits and vegetables is key. So we must eat a balanced diet, but especially fruits and vegetables we need to include in our diet. Exercise has been shown to be a very good immune booster, so we must keep our bodies exercised. Depending on your age, depending on your weight, depending on your any infections any conditions, health conditions that you might have, there are always appropriate exercises for you that you can do. The other thing that we need to do, and although maybe not in the short term, but in the long run, is always keeping our weight in check. Yeah, so a weight that is appropriate for your height is important for your immune system. So ideally, we should look at our weight, probably a long-term setup. Other issues that have been shown to improve our immunity is cessation of certain habits like smoking. Reducing alcohol intake has been shown to boost our immunity. And just things like having adequate rest and adequate sleep has also been shown to have a very positive impact on immunity. Yeah.
You mentioned that, of course, we do know that for some people, their bodies are able to fight the virus.
Yes.
And even as we'll come back to the diet, but how is it that the body is able to fight the virus? Especially looking at the impact it's had on some people, some people's body organs, like we mentioned earlier on, and then we see there are some people who the virus, their bodies are able to fight off the virus. I mean, tell us, how is that possible?
Well, our bodies are always fighting organisms that enter. These are what we call the infectious agents. In the environments where we live, we are exposed every day to bacteria, to viruses, to fungi, and to all other infectious organisms that are around us. And we don't always take medications for this because our body is always in a state of what they call immune surveillance. Yeah, there are cells in our body that are specifically meant for fighting infectious agents that enter our body. So in certain people, just this normal body response system is enough to contain the virus without you I'll give you an example. We always have colds. Yeah, the cold virus. We always get colds under normal circumstances, and most of us don't take any medication for the cold. What we do is we just take some water and we just take some rest, and then the cold clears. So how does it clear? The body actually fights the cold virus and contains the cold virus. So it is only in those whom either the response of the body is overwhelming or the effect of the virus is overwhelming. Yeah, that those are the people who get very sick. Otherwise, a majority of the population who are healthy are actually able to contain the virus.
Let's talk about the asymptomatic cases.
Yes.
When we even talk about asymptomatic cases, what do we mean?
So asymptomatic case means you are infected by the virus, which means if you are tested, the virus will be found in your body. But you're not sick, you don't feel anything. You're actually feeling well. You're going about your business like nothing is happening. So it's basically what is lack of symptoms. You don't have any symptoms that relates to the disease, and yet you have the virus in your system, so you're called asymptomatic. Yeah.
So when we talk about asymptomatic cases, or basically people who are showing no symptoms, how is this possible in helping us understand the workings of the virus in the body, and it being that there are some people who test positive for the virus, but yet there are no symptoms?
Yes. Well, as we have said, what do we call symptoms? What we call symptoms are what the patient feels as a result of the impact of this disease or of this virus on certain organs of the body. For instance, remember we said that once the virus enters your body, then there is production of certain chemicals meant to neutralize that virus. Now, in the process of formation of these chemicals, as they fight with the virus, the body temperature can rise. Yes? So when the body temperature rises above a certain level, then you get fever. But for certain people, that fight between these chemicals and the virus does not result in fever, which means your body is able to balance, and therefore you don't get to that point of fever. So you don't get the symptom of fever. Doesn't mean your body was not fighting the virus, but you just did not get to the point of fever. So the response of your body did not get to that level of giving you symptoms. Yeah, and this happens in a lot of people. That actually what asymptomatic just means absence of symptoms, you know. Yeah, so ideally your body is fighting the virus, and this happens all the time to our bodies. Our bodies are always fighting something. There's always something in our body. So by the time we begin to experience symptoms, it just means our bodies are beginning to get overwhelmed by whatever infectious agent is entering our body. Otherwise, on our day-to-day, on the routine activities that we do, we encounter a lot of infectious agents. And our bodies get rid of these agents without even us realizing that we actually got into contact with these agents. And this is also true for COVID-19. Yes.
And you know, we've had the government talking about this a lot. For some people, you know, the government saying that if you at all suspect that you are developing symptoms of COVID, it is good to isolate and, you know, observe your health for a couple of days. For this particular situation, what is someone supposed to be doing in terms of observing your symptoms or the faring on of your health? What are we expected to do when we are self-isolating?
Yeah. So first of all, we are assuming that you know what the symptoms are. So when you see these symptoms, you begin to suspect that you're having COVID-19. But then again, COVID-19 symptoms are not very specific. They are the kind of symptoms you develop with any other illness like malaria or even just a common cold. So you can have fever, you can have a sore throat, you can have chest pain, you can have joint aches and all that. So the best way is actually, if you see some of the symptoms, the best thing is to get tested. So, and the reason why it's important to get tested is so that if you are positive, remember we have said this virus is highly infectious. So you might fall in the category of people who will develop mild symptoms and recover. But in the process, if you go about your business as usual, you may infect someone else who is at risk of developing severe or even critical symptoms. So the key is to take care of yourself as you also prevent yourself from infecting others. So if you suspect that you have COVID-19 or you have developed symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19, my take would be that you obtain the test, and if that test shows that you're positive, then you will either self-isolate, which means now you put a barrier or a distance between you and the rest of the population. And this, as we have seen, the government is having a two-pronged approach. You can do it at home or you can do it in an isolation facility. And the whole idea here is to prevent you from infecting someone else. Now, when you're in self-isolation, ideally, you're supposed to, we are assuming that you are aware of the symptoms of COVID-19 and of progression of those symptoms. Of course, if this is an elderly person and a person who needs care, then it's a bit different, and this is the kind of a person who needs to be isolated in a facility where someone else can do that observation for them. So this person is able to know, the idea is to know whether this person is recovering or progressing, because certain interventions need to be instituted early to prevent progression from moderate to severe and to critical disease. It has actually been demonstrated that early intervention, like when the organs begin to get involved, early intervention is able to reverse those changes that can lead to critical disease and therefore lead to death. So that observation is key. And that's why sometimes isolation in a healthcare facility is better, because you have a healthcare provider who will be able to observe you. If you are at home, then somebody who is trained must be there to be able to observe and report, so that you are monitored closely and it is established whether your symptoms are progressing or whether you are on your road to recovery.
Dr. Florence, I know of a person who started developing what looked like a cough, coughing a little bit, and assuming, you know what, this is just a cough, it will go.
Yeah.
And eventually this person collapses and is rushed to hospital. Upon being rushed to hospital, is found to be positive for COVID-19. What are the symptoms we need to look out for as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
All right. Well, COVID-19 has come in many phases, what we call presentation. It comes in many phases. The most common presentation of COVID-19 is respiratory symptoms. Those are symptoms that involve the airway. The cough, the sore throat, usually they say the dry cough, and then a sore throat, and fever. So those have been the most common symptoms, especially fever has been reported in almost around 70 to 80% of the patients, of the people who have COVID-19. And then the dry cough. For some people, they just feel they have a sore throat. Yeah, and then now for others have these presentations that are not very common. Like some people have actually had the first thing they've experienced was just diarrhea and vomiting. And they didn't even have a cough, they didn't have fever. And when they were checked, they were found to have COVID-19. Some people present with general body aches. They feel like what we say we have malaria, you know. So someone is just presenting with general body aches. Others do not present with anything at all, as we have said. They are completely devoid of symptoms, while others present with sudden onset respiratory distress, which means sudden onset difficulty in breathing, where one did not have any difficulty in breathing at all. So it's a whole spectrum of presentation that has been seen in COVID-19. It doesn't seem to follow any pattern.
So looking at now, because we've actually looked at boosting the immunity of a person, I'd like us to look further into the diet, just understanding, because I know we've talked a bit about it, but it is good to also understand what kind of diet are we looking at. For someone who are tested positive, they have recovered, what is the best diet for them in terms of keeping their immunity strong?
All right. So the best diet for them is a diet which is actually best for everyone who needs their immunity up, and a diet which is rich in vegetables and fruits has been suggested because of the vitamins that it gives. So this is the diet that is suggested for most people. Just make sure that your diet is rich in vegetables and fruits. Yeah, so
all right.
Even as you take a balanced diet, but fruits and vegetables are key.
They're very key.
Yeah.
So let's take a look. Even as we talk about fruits, there's been a concern for some, just asking the question, how am I supposed to handle myself? Because I was talking to a colleague yesterday about our topic today, and she was telling me, you can never be too careful. You touch a doorknob, you might actually get COVID. Now you have to go to supermarkets, you have to buy bread, you have to buy groceries. So how careful can you be? So when it comes to handling groceries, let's begin there. How do you handle your groceries?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree with her that you can never be too careful. One, because infectious agents are everywhere. They are in the air, they are on surfaces. So these measures that we are putting in place right now, like frequent hand washing, sanitizing, and the social distancing that we are putting, is just to minimize the risk. But we cannot eliminate the risk. The risk is always there that we will somehow get in touch with an infectious organism. Now, when you go to the grocery, for instance, you have no control over how many people have handled whatever you are handling. Mm-hmm. If you go and get a bunch of vegetables or a bunch of fruits, I've seen oranges where somebody is selling oranges and you go and touch almost all of them, and return and take another one and return. So you have really no control. But for those, the ones that you have picked and you have decided to go home with, yes, ideally when you take them, you should just wash them thoroughly. If it's a piece of orange, if it's an apple and you want to eat it, the issue is to wash it. And for this COVID era, of course, for an orange you will peel it. So you will eat the orange from inside, and therefore you assume that the inside of the orange has not been touched, and therefore it is safe for you to eat. For an apple, you can still peel, get the outer peel. For vegetables, you will cook. Viruses will not be able to survive cooking. Much as you will wash, and therefore you will cook. And so the idea is just the normal routine practices of how we are handling. So it's not necessary to go into details of washing. I think some people say you wash with vinegar and you wash with... you'll end up destroying some of the nutrients that you actually need in those. So just handle them the normal way. Just observe your own normal hygiene. And you'll reduce your risk. But the thing is, as a normal individual walking around in an environment, you cannot eliminate the risk of getting in touch with the infectious organism. So you also have to trust your body. And I think the other thing I would probably like to caution against is the issue of stress and anxiety. Because a lot of people are now going to calm down because of stress and anxiety. You're just too careful. You're just too stressed about... I once watched a clip of a guy who was sanitizing his hands, and then he realized that the sanitizer, he needed to sanitize the container of the sanitizer because,
I'm guilty of that, by the way.
So I mean, it's the stress, and stress can lower your immunity. You understand?
I think we've come to a level of paranoia, Dr. Florence.
So
I will tell you, when I touch my phone, I'm from opening the gate at home.
Yes.
I'll have to sanitize my hands, and then I sanitize my phone.
Yes.
I mean, like we're saying, how careful can you be?
So, I mean, let's be careful in moderation. Let's observe what has been said. Social distancing, hand washing frequently. We put on our masks. But then again, let's also understand that the environment is not sterile. Yes.
Let's just to go back to groceries. I know for some, there's been that question of, should I wash my groceries with detergents or with soap? Is that really safe?
No. That's not recommended at all. If you're washing your vegetables, just wash your vegetables with water. Do not wash your vegetables you can't wash your vegetables with soap. Some of these things people are doing are going to destroy the nutrients that you require from these vegetables. So let's just prepare our vegetables the standard way. Before you handle vegetables, wash your hands, and then just handle your vegetables the normal way.
All right. I know that was a very critical question because not too long ago, I was reading a story of someone asking about groceries. Of course, like you mentioned, you can never be too careful. You walk into a supermarket, you don't know who was there. But in terms of sanitizing your hands, let's now understand the whole idea of why you have to wash your hands and what impact it has on killing the virus or dealing with the virus. Let's first begin with the sanitizer.
Right.
And we'll also look at the fact that people have said that there are fake sanitizers out there. So even before we understand how the workings of the sanitizer on the hands or whichever surface it's poured on, which one is the safest type of sanitizer? What are you supposed to look out for?
Okay. I don't think I would be able to say what is the safest type of sanitizer. One, because there are so many brands of sanitizers in the market. Actually, remember when this COVID thing started, there's a young man who told me that his friend has left his job, what he used to do as a boda rider, and he is now manufacturing sanitizers and selling. So he basically just went and bought spirit, surgical spirit and glycerin, and started mixing and bottling them and selling sanitizer. Now, they have said, it's been said that for a sanitizer to be effective, the alcohol content needs to be at least 70%. Now, for you and I who are consumers buying sanitizers off the shelf, how will you know that this sanitizer is containing 70% alcohol? It's very difficult because you can't test, you don't know. If it's written on the label that it contains 70% alcohol, then the best you can do is believe that it contains 70% alcohol. So really it's hard for us. And that's why we tend to just hope that if it has the mark of Kenya National Bureau of Standards, then it has been tested and it has been found to be effective and it's supposed to be there. But let's also not forget that even the counterfeits have the mark. Yeah, there are people who are able to get those marks and put them on those containers and just when you buy it, so it's very difficult. But having said that, the most effective way of keeping your hands clean is just washing your hands with soap and water. It's the most effective way. The soap actually dissolves the viral coat if there's a virus and bacteria on your on your hands. So you just apply soap and water, wash your hands. Rub your hands follow the steps of hand washing, which I think have been described, around 7 steps, and then rinse the hand with water. That hand is just clean. So, and you find that soap is cheaper than sanitizer. So ideally, sanitizer, you can carry it and use it in a place where you're not able to access soap and water. But if you're able to access soap and water, then that should be your first line protection. Just wash your hands with soap and water. Otherwise, how effective sanitizer is, what is the most safest sanitizer, it's very hard because right now everybody is manufacturing sanitizer. And you don't know the ones that have been manufactured back door, like this young man who left his job as a boda rider to now manufacture sanitizers. He was doing it in his room, yeah? And you don't know how much of if the surgical spirit is more expensive, then he has to put little of it and give more glycerin. And therefore, I don't think that kind of sanitizer would be effective at all. Yeah.
Dr. Florence, what's the significance of using water and soap in terms of making sure that your hands are clean and you've been able to eliminate the virus? How does water and soap affect the lifeline, if I can say, of the virus?
Okay, a virus, the structure of a virus is that a virus is a very tiny particle, very, very tiny, and then it is surrounded by a coat. It's a small particle surrounded by a coat. Yeah, now it needs that coat to be infectious. So what the soap does is the soap dissolves the coat of the virus. So once the coat of the virus is dissolved, then the virus is rendered inactive. So when you apply soap to your hands and you rub, you are able to dissolve the coat of the virus. And then when you wash your hands with water, then it rinses off the virus from your hands. So your hands are clean and devoid of the virus. So it's very important. Soap and water is very important. So when you wash with, say, water alone, then the water alone is not able to dislodge the virus. But once you put soap, soap is able to dislodge the virus.
Yeah.
Yes, from your hands. So it's very important to wash hands with soap and water in this time, and do it frequently, because you don't know at what point you have come in contact with the virus.
And how much pressure should you apply? Because for some, you find someone just does some bit of worship quickly and goes. Or if you're sanitizing, you just do it lightly. You know, is pressure significant in terms of eliminating the virus from whatever surface that you're trying to eliminate the virus from?
Well, ideally, the way we wash our hands normally, just the normal rubbing of the hands. You don't need to apply very high pressure. Just the normal rubbing of the hands. It's been suggested that you should at least take 20 seconds when you're washing your hands. That will give you adequate time for the soap to attach to the virus, to dissolve the coat of the virus, and also for you to address different surfaces. You know, you're supposed to wash the back of the hands, wash the tip of the hands. So sometimes, you know, we just apply soap, just touch a bit of soap and water. We do it more like a ritual. But we are supposed to do it systematically, so that by the time we finish washing our hands, all the surfaces, including the interdigits, have been washed, and the tips of the hands.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Florence, for making time for us today. Of course, we have learned quite a bit. I like what you said earlier on, that COVID-19 is not a death sentence, because if you imagine the number of people out there who have not been very forthcoming in terms of getting tested, I mean, it's raising eyebrows, and it's a great concern for the government. But before we go, Dr. Florence, speaking to the Kenyans who are listening to us right now, what will be your final sentiments as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
All right. So my final sentiment is that COVID-19 as a virus is here with us. Most likely, in the end, we might all just get COVID-19. So my take would be that if you feel that you have symptoms of COVID-19, it would be important that you report to a health facility and get tested. But testing positive does not necessarily mean that you are going to die of COVID. The idea is just that you prevent infecting others who might be at risk of severe disease or even death. So for me, I think try and be safe. Wash your hands, as has been suggested, with soap and water. Put on a mask if you are in a place which is risky. And just generally take care of yourself and take care of your environment. The other thing that I've observed is, of course, there's too much anxiety. People think that once one has recovered from COVID, they can still get COVID from that person. The truth is that once one has recovered from COVID, they even end up testing negative. So they don't have the virus in their bodies. So you don't have to avoid them. You don't have to stigmatize them. A lot of people are being stigmatized because they got COVID. We can all get COVID, and we will actually, almost all of us will get COVID. So no need to stigmatize somebody just because they got
And Dr.
COVID.
Florence, before you go too far, I know that was actually a question I needed to ask. The whole idea, I mean, people say and speculate that once you've tested positive and you've had the virus in your body, some reports say that the virus can be eliminated from your body, and others say that the virus remains in your body. So what is true?
Okay, the virus gets eliminated from your body. Once the body once you've been through the disease, your body is able to get rid of this virus at some point. And a lot of people end up testing negative. Yeah. In fact, I think what the government of Kenya has been adopting lately is you must test negative before you are discharged. Now, when you're negative, you're negative. There's no virus in your body at that point. Yes. So it means the virus has completely cleared from your system and you're now virus free. Now the question is, you can't get reinfected. So the fact that you have no virus today doesn't mean that if you get in touch with the virus tomorrow, you can't get it again. So you can still get reinfected. So that issue of people have been talking about immunity. How immune are you after being infected? The truth is, it's been documented, especially in those countries who have experienced this longer than us, that there are certain people who have been cured and then got reinfected by the virus. So when you get out there, you must continue taking precautions just like everyone else.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Florence Namisi, for your time. Such a great wealth of knowledge as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Thank you for making time and coming to our studio.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Florence Namisi, who is an infectious diseases specialist, talking to us about all matters COVID-19. Remember, this is a segment we'll be having every Wednesday, just basically to help you understand all matters COVID-19. Remember, we do not know when COVID will be a thing of the past as far as the fight against COVID-19 is concerned, but we do hope that in the future, near future, that things will be much, much better. And remember to tune in every Wednesday again, as I've said, for everything that you need to know about COVID-19. This has been COVID 360 segment. Right now, I want us to take a short break. When we return, we talk about hair, the secrets of having healthy hair. You may want to stay tuned to find out how to make sure your hair is healthy. Don't go too far. We'll be back shortly. What? Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe. Right now, I want us to talk about matters hair. And indeed, it's been a very interesting discussion just with the doctor who was with us in studio. And right now, I want to talk further about health. And in this case, we're talking about healthy hair. And I have Dennis Enzobere, who is a hairstylist, to tell us a little bit more about how to maintain healthy hair. Dennis, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Tell us a little bit about what you do.
As you said, my name is, actually I don't use Inzoberi so much, I use Rodman, so most guys know me as Dennis Rodman. I'm a stylist for actually slightly more than 15 years now. Yeah.
More than 15 years, you've been styling hair?
Yes.
Are you Kenyan? I mean, I'm just asking because Inzoberi.
Yes, I am.
Really?
Yeah, typical Luya actually.
That's an interesting, anyway, it's a very beautiful name.
Thank you.
But you know what, let's talk about hair.
Okay.
When you talk about healthy hair, what does healthy hair look like for you?
Well, it's quite one, personally, I love long hair, and yes, long healthy hair. So one, it will not need to have split ends. So it will need to be well moisturized. Well treated as well. Moisturized and treated meaning you need to use enough oils to keep it moisturized. So yeah, no split ends, well moisturized, well kept, no dandruff, no flakes. So yeah.
But when we talk about, like you've mentioned issues of moisturizing and split ends, let's begin with split ends, especially for ladies like myself. You'll find your hair has a lot of split ends. How often should you cut off the split ends?
Well, with relaxed hair, we personally do it every retouch. So whenever you have, you're doing a retouch, I usually like trimming the split ends. And as it is well known, you have to, there's no other way to go about split ends, is cut them off. So every retouch, you do a trim for the split ends. And then for natural hair, I usually advise at least every 4 months or every 6 months. Yeah.
So when you're talking about a retouch, you're talking about the chemical that you find ladies applying.
Yes.
So how often should you at least have your hair chemicalized?
Well, there is the standard time, and there is the time that we as stylists recommend clients to do. So the standard recommended time is 6 to 8 weeks. That is a month and a half to 2 months. Then we usually advise clients, at least if they don't want to do a retouch in between a short time, we usually advise them to braid or plait to give it maybe a break for about a month or two. So generally there is the standard recommended time for 6 to 8 weeks if one is not braiding or plating or doing the protective styling. And then there is now after that, if one is doing protective styling, then it will go about 3 to 4 months. Yeah.
Let's talk about the whole idea of having healthy hair in terms of, like now you've mentioned it's good to trim your hair, especially if you're doing another retouch, which means like when ladies apply chemical and whatnot. But let's look at the health of the hair and the relationship it has to trimming your hair. So if you don't trim your hair, what happens to the hair?
Eventually you'll find split ends. Okay, just like the word says, split ends. You will find one strand of hair having 2 strands or rather splitting into 2. So if you don't take care of that, it will tend to split up to the roots. So when you think about it, that is actually really bad hair. Yeah. So it is quite difficult to maintain. It's quite it doesn't sit well when styling. It doesn't style well. It doesn't keep a style when maybe a stylist is styling and then you try and style it. It's a bit unmanageable. So yeah, actually, split ends are quite a nag.
And when, like you've mentioned, the split ends, if you don't cut them off, they go all the way to the scalp.
Yes.
Can that lead to hair loss?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so if at all you have not been cutting your split ends and you want to recover your hair, is that a process that can be reversed so that you get back your hair and get it back on a healthy status?
Yes, personally I usually advise, okay, there's some ladies who would really not want to trim off their split ends. So personally I usually advise then, I will trim it off just a bit, but then you'll have to take very good care of it, which means you'll have to moisturize it. You'll find in a case whereby split ends, in most cases they are brought about the hair not being well moisturized, dry and flaky. Then if you tend to moisturize it more, then the split ends will not be as much. So I will usually advise, I'll trim off a bit, but now you'll need to take good care of it, going forward.
And mentioning the whole idea of having to trim it and then it's your responsibility to take care of the hair. So reversing the whole process of having lost your hair, having not cut off the edges. When we talk about now the chemicals you use, because other than trimming off your hair, there's been stories of ladies who have lost, patches of their hair because of the chemical. What really results to loss of hair in terms of the kinds of chemicals one uses?
Okay, being in the industry for this long, I've personally not come across a client who has lost hair because of a chemical. Unless the chemical really irritated the scalp in the sense of burning the scalp, then it creates a wound, then that wound leads to the hair loss. But I wouldn't say chemicals are the causes of losing hair. No. I think the use of either a hairdresser using the wrong chemical on a client or using it wrongly on the client, then that will cause the hair loss, but not necessarily the chemicals.
When you say using it wrongly on the client, what do you mean?
You'll find some clients have very sensitive scalps, so usually the chemicals are usually labeled. There is a super and there is regular. So you'll find if a client has very sensitive scalp, we usually recommend you use a milder relaxer because it will be gentler on the scalp. So it won't irritate the scalp, it won't burn the scalp. So that will be able to secure the client's safety in terms of using the relaxer and which relaxer to be used as well. Yeah. So and then there are clients who are also, the scalp is usually not easily irritated. So and also comes down to also the hair type, which also determines on what type of relaxer one uses. You'll find also the knowledge of the clients or of the stylists, technical and both how they have been trained at the colleges on how to use the relaxers. Because you'll find we've been advised, we've been trained that you are usually advised not to put the relaxer on the scalp. Yes, you put the relaxer a few inches from the scalp. Yes, that enables the client to be assured that the hair will be taken care of as the skin as well, which is the scalp.
You've mentioned something there. You've talked about hair types and hair types determining the kind of chemicals that are used.
Yes.
How many hair types do we have?
We have coarse, which is now some of our kinky hairs, and then we have fine and we have medium. So I would say 3. Yeah, coarse, fine, and medium. Yeah.
So when, for me, a lady who's trying to figure out what chemical to use, what would you advise me?
I would request you to come to a salon. I have a consultation with you. I have a look at your hair, get to feel it with my hands. Then that is when I will know which type of hair you have, if it is coarse or medium or fine. Yeah.
How does coarse feel like?
Coarse is it's tough. It's most of the time is usually full on the head. It's ningumu in the Swahili word. Ningumu. You'll find in the case whereby it is, if you use, like, for example, a milder chemical, it will not process. Yes. So generally ni ile nywele mingi ngumu. Yeah, that is the coarse hair. Yeah.
And the other type that you were talking about,
the medium is in between coarse and fine. Utapata or rather you'll find it is not so hard and it's not fine. Yeah, it is somewhere there in the middle. So there, now it's up to the stylist knowledge and expertise to know which relaxer to use. Now, depending on the client's scalp, the porosity of the hair, the density of the hair. So yeah, and then the fine is when utapata, in most cases nile iko chache kwa kichwa. Most of the time the fine hair is usually chache kwa kichwa. An example is Somali hair. Yeah, Somali hair is usually, most of them are usually fine to medium. Yeah, most of them are usually fine to medium. Yeah.
When we away from even using the chemicals, and we know that after you've chemicalized your hair, you have to, of course, wash it.
Yes.
But I'd like to know, before we go into shampooing and knowing what type of shampoo you need to use for what hair, how often should an African woman wash her hair?
Well, personally, I usually advise at least weekly. Weekly. You'll find like the Somalis, they usually wash their hair every day. And to some level, I think that's why their hairs are usually very healthy and long. And so, yeah, if you can wash your body every day, why not your hair? Yeah. So, but to some level, it might not make a financial sense because most of our brothers and sisters will not be able to afford it. So we usually also advise at least 2 weeks. If you can't do weekly, then at least 2 weeks. Yeah.
So you're recommending at least
weekly?
Weekly?
Yes. If
and
the
in
hair
a
is
day?
open, if you can do weekly, I would rather you do weekly.
Some experts say that it's only advisable to wash your hair once a day and not twice, because it ends up thinning the hair and damaging the scalp. Is this true?
Not really thinning, but and not really damaging in per se, but it dries out the hair and the skin. Yeah, that's why you'll find like for most of the ladies I know, they shower like twice a day. You have to keep moisturizing the skin, because the soaps and the shower gels tend to make the skin very dry because of when it's trying to remove the dirt and all, it also removes the body oils, the natural body oils. So when you wash your hair twice a day, you're even removing the natural sebums of the hair and the scalp. So personally, I wouldn't recommend you wash your hair even 2 or 3 days. You give it time to recover what you have extracted with the with the products like the shampoos, because the shampoos extract to some level even moistures if you're using the wrong product, and yeah, the natural oils. So washing hair every day, not really advisable. And if you really have to do it, then you really have to put back what you have taken out. Yeah.
And when you say put back, how then do you put it back?
There are some products you can use. They are leave-in conditioners, which are enriched with the essentials like minerals and oils, which are also good for the hair. There are some oils that you can also use to put back the moisture on the hair that maybe the shampoos and whatever have removed. Yeah.
Let's talk about shampoo. Which one is the best shampoo to use?
Best shampoo to use, now it depends on your hair type, and it also depends on what you have on the hair. But we usually advise a sulfate-free shampoo, which will not, sulfate-free shampoo does not extract so much from the hair. It's as it washes the hair, it also enriches it with mineral, with moisture. Yeah. If I can remember well, or if I'm right, sulfates, are salts. Yeah. Yeah. And salts are usually are the ones that are usually made to make shampoos and detergents. So yeah.
And for those people who like to wash their hair with maybe kipande soap and bathing soap, it can't be any kind of bathing soap. I mean, does this affect the health of the hair?
Yes. Like, okay, generally, okay, just think about it. Kipande soap, it is usually made for what? washing our garments. And the garments don't have the same composition as hair. Yeah. So the kipande will be very harsh, very, very harsh on the hair. And we will find if a person does it, you'll tend to see the hair is not the same as someone else who is now using the right products and the right shampoos. Yeah, it's usually quite brittle, quite coarse, and in most cases, no matter what you do to the hair, it will just not work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as much as you, like, say you will put oils, they will not moisturize that hair. Yeah. Let's say even when you end up now, if you've been having natural and you want to end up doing a relaxer, mm-hmm. it might even backfire. Backfire mm-hmm. meaning the chemical will not work properly because of the deposits the kipande has been putting on the hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kipande, no.
Or what about the bathing soap, the normal bathing soap?
As I've said, they have not been formulated to wash hair. Mm-hmm. The hair has its own composition mm-hmm. that has to be taken care of with the right product. The shower gels are for showering your body, to remove whatever you have on the body, but not on the hair. Yeah. So there are some things that you'll find in the hair shampoos that you'll not find in the body shower gels. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it is still very harsh on the hair. Yeah. And of course, they are not sulfate free, so hizo zinatoa uchafu kabisa, which is not recommended for the hair. Because you'll even find when you're shampooing, you're not supposed to shampoo more than 2 times. Yeah, because if you shampoo more than 2 times, you're excreting so much from the hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll find the shower gel will remove so much than even when you do the normal shampoo mm-hmm. twice or thrice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll find the shower gel will. When you use it, after washing, you'll find the hair very brittle, mm-hmm. very hard, and very dry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So personally, I wouldn't advise it. Yeah.
Blow drying, for some, you'll hear, even I have people I know personally who they feel blow drying has a way of making your hair thin, excessive heat. Talk about blow drying.
Oh, blow drying. Yes, you'll find there's some stylists, I don't know, they find working with so much heat easier for their work, but mm-hmm. it ends up damaging the hair, definitely, because the heat more or less does the same thing as drying out the hair. Yeah, that's where you'll find you're told blow drying damages. But there's a good way of doing blow dries. You don't use so much heat and you don't use so much power. So much power meaning, on the blow dry there is the medium, low, and high. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So especially when you're doing it at home, just use a medium heat, or rather medium speed and medium heat. You don't have to use even at the salon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just control the heat and control the speed. Yeah. Medium will do. Personally, I usually do that with my clients.
And how often are you supposed to blow dry your hair? Or, is there too much blow drying and,
Yes, there's too much blow drying in terms of, especially when you've washed, there are times you don't have to blow dry. You just air dry because it will still dry. Of course, it will take a longer time to dry, but it will still dry. Mm-hmm. Everyday you can still also do everyday blow drying when you're using the right amount of heat and the right amount of speed of the blow dry. You can do every day, but use the right. That is also temperature. Use the right temperature to dry the hair. Don't use too much heat to dry the hair, because either way, even if you use the cold temperature, the hair will still dry. Of course, it will take a bit longer, but it will still dry. Yeah.
Talk about braiding, because it's believed, for some you believe, and I grew up hearing guys saying, the more you braid or plait your hair, the longer it becomes. I want to hear if that is true.
No,
it's not true.
It is not true.
Why?
It is I actually looked it up, and it is scientifically proven. Whether you braid or not braid, the hair grows 2 inches. 2 inches, yes. 2 inches at least every month. Yeah. So whether you've braided or not, it will still grow 2 inches. I would say also it depends on your genetics. There are some Mzungu hair maybe grows faster. You'll find the hairs grow faster. Maybe Chinese also grow. The hairs grow faster. Climate also affects on the hair growth. It only looks like it has grown longer when you've braided because for us Africans, you've stretched the curl. Yes, we've stretched the hair curl because our hairs are kinky. Kinky means they are really curly. You know, our hairs may intertwine. The curls are really intertwined. That's why they're called kinky. So Mzungu hair, you know, most of them are either curly or straight or wavy. Chinese hair, you know, theirs are straight, and most of the Asians and Muhindi, most of their hairs are straight. But ours are really kinky. So if you braid, you've stretched that curl. So you have
that's why you
get the illusion, oh, it has grown longer, but it grows exactly the same, whether you braid it
2
or
inches.
not braid it, yeah.
And what's the proper way of braiding? You know, sometimes you see people who have braided their hair and their scalp, like, ni kama mtu the skin imerudishwa nyuma kabisa, like it's really tight.
I know.
Talk to us about that and the risks that it poses on the hairline and the health of the hair.
Yes, braiding. There's some hairstyles, of course, I would not even recommend my clients to do. In fact, I've had some cases whereby I've told my clients, don't braid that hairstyle, don't braid that hairstyle. And you'll find they will end up doing it and then they'll come crying to me, what I told them, I told you not to braid it, I told you not to do it. Of course, there will be some hair loss, especially on the hairline. You'll find some stylists they really overstretch in terms of braiding. They really overstretch. And the hairline generally is usually a very weak area when it comes to braiding and manipulating the hair. Yeah. So, yes, then braiding, I usually advise don't braid more than 4 weeks. Ikienda sana 5 weeks max, remove the braids. If you really want to do it again, or rather if you really want them again, remove, treat the hair, do it again. Yeah, but don't stay with the braids for more than 5 weeks. It's like covering your body for 5 weeks, not showering, not moisturizing, not doing whatever. Oh, it is too much.
How often does a scalp what do you call this? What's the word? Is it shelling or what?
Shading.
Because shading. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So there's this. We spoke to a lady yesterday, and she was talking about why you need to take care of your body. You need to know that the skin is always shading, and you need to do some few things to make sure that the skin that is shading off is actually eliminated from the body, so that you don't get an odor. So sometimes you can be seated next to someone and the hair is not smelling too good. What's usually the cause?
Natural oils, sweat. Our body system tends to sweat. So yes, you also sweat in the scalp, by the way. So the sweat, the natural oils, and then now the external oils that you put on the hair will tend to make the hair smell. Yeah.
But how often does the scalp hair, the scalp skin, shed off?
The scalp skin is just the same as the other normal skin anyway. So if you can shower every day and still wipe yourself with a towel and feel like, and actually see the skin has come off. So I can actually say every day. I can actually say every day. And that is why I also recommend wash your hair weekly, because the skin has shed. The natural sebums are now decongest. Yeah, I can say actually every day.
Is this related to having dandruff?
Not necessarily, no. No. Dandruff is a fungal infection whereby you'll find maybe the natural sebums you have secreted from your body, and then the oils you've put on the hair ended up not reacting properly. with each other, so they will tend to maybe cause the fungal infections, which are now the dandruff and all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when you look at now healthy hair, what would you say would be the ideal routine towards any African lady being able to maintain healthy hair? And not just African, but any lady at all. For healthy hair, what will it take to, get that bouncy? Because for me, by the way, my hair is very thin, and I've always wanted bouncy hair. I don't know if this is genetic or whatever it is, I don't know. But how can you get that, hair that looks bouncy and it's full and it's healthy?
The products you use, there's some products that will make your hair fuller. If for your case you have fine hair, there's some oils. Usually, it's well known that black castor makes the hair fuller, healthier, stronger, grows longer, faster. Yeah, there's some oils that you can use to make the hair fuller and healthier and bouncier. You can still use chemicals, but now you'll need to find the right stylist to work on your hair, because they are the products that you can use, which will not thin out your hair further or more, which will actually make your hair look fuller than thinned out. Yes. So there are some products you can use to make the hair healthier and fuller if you have the thin hair. Then just whenever you wash your hair, make sure you put back what you have taken out in terms of treat it at least weekly. If you can't do it weekly, then treat it at least every 2 weeks. Yes, you can. It's not a must you treat it weekly. You can still wash your hair weekly, but you can give it intervals. Like, let's say today or this week you washed and treated. Next week you can just do a wash, a wash and dry or a wash and set. Then the other week you can again do a treatment.
Talk to us about natural remedies. Sometimes you see people applying avocado on their hair. Are there natural remedies, in case I'm not able to afford the products because maybe they're too expensive for me? Are there natural remedies I can pursue that can help me get myself some healthy hair?
As much as you'd want to use the natural products, you'll find either they are too heavy on the hair, or they don't have the right composition. They have not been well mixed or well used to be able to help the hair. Yes. Personally, I usually mix up some oils like olive oil, coconut oil, and whatever. They are very good in moisturizing the hair. But of course, when you use them at home, they'll require a longer time to be able to, let me call it, for maybe a lack of a better word, seep into the hair. Yeah. But when you use it correctly, they will still work. For eggs and avocado.
Because I've heard of the eggs and avocados concoction that is supposed to help your hair become healthy and even grow longer.
Naturally, hair is not just stuck on the head. It grows. It grows. These products have, yes, you will see, it's egg enriched, it's avocado oil and all. It has been really purified to be able to work on the hair faster, other than you just having the whole avocado and putting it on the head. I would rather you eat that avocado and that egg, because it will be, the body will work well from within to absorb the food, what the hair needs. Yes, but not putting it on the hair. Putting on the hair is, to me and to some level, it doesn't make any much change.
Let's just finish up with diet then. So when we look at diet, what would be the ideal diet for helping someone maintain and possibly achieve healthy hair on the head?
Vegetables and fruits. A bit of proteins. Yeah, a bit of proteins, but generally I usually say vegetables and fruits. Yes, they have quite an amount of amino acids, vitamins, and proteins as well to be able to help the hair grow faster and healthier. Yes. So, and also drinking water, it's essential, very, very essential. Yes.
Dennis Inzoberi, hairstylist. So much knowledge on all matters here. Thank you for making time and coming to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
And we hope to have you again. Tell us more about hair.
Sure.
And especially themed hair like mine.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, that has been Dennis Inzoberi, who is a hairstylist, helping us understand how you can maintain and possibly achieve healthy hair. I want to walk to the touch screen right now and just take a look at some of the roads in Nairobi and just see exactly what's happening on the roads. I know that earlier on, the roads seem to be very clear. That's why we didn't even look at them earlier on. But if you look at Globe Roundabout, seems like there's activity. What's the time now? 8:45. And seems like there's a bit of activity there at the Globe Roundabout flyover. And traffic leaving town. I think this is going into the CBD, coming from the Globe Roundabout, going into the CBD. There's a bit of traffic. I think that's the area where you find the stage that where you can get a matatu coming to either Parklands or Westlands area. And just looking at Murang'a Road here, not looking too bad, especially when you're leaving the CBD. Looks like the roads are very friendly, not much traffic. But I think again, coming into town, the CBD that is, there's a bit of traffic there. And I think that is just a little bit normal. Perhaps this is the time most of you are going back into are trying to access the CBD. Let's just take a look at the Central Park of Nairobi area there. Kenyatta Avenue has traffic, well, leading up to the roundabout here. As you can see, we have some bit of traffic for those of you who are trying to go into the CBD. This particular lane here, just of people who are probably driving into the CBD. And yes, Kenyatta Avenue, anyone coming from the other side of the road along Kenyatta Avenue going into the CBD, there's a bit of traffic there. Also, we can see here Kenyatta Avenue for those who are leaving the CBD connecting to Uhuru Highway. There's just a bit of traffic. Of course, very common to find a bit of traffic at the roundabout. I guess this is usually because of traffic lights. But taking a look at the road that leads up to the University Way, just almost where the St. Andrews PCA parking is, or the Aviators Service offices, there's a bit of traffic, especially when you are approaching the roundabout. And I just want us to take a look at Uhuru Highway. I know Uhuru Highway is one of those major highways that many of us like to ply, especially when we're trying to go into the CBD. But let's first take a look at Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie not looking too bad. But for those who are coming from, are trying to access the CBD through the Haile Selassie roundabout, seems like there's a bit of traffic there, especially for guys who are coming, for those of you who are coming from Uhuru Highway direction, going into the roundabout that's just at the Haile Selassie, traffic there. But, you know, the roads are not looking too bad. I think back then the roads were even worse than this, but you know, if at all you want to leave the house, I think this is a good time, not looking too bad. But let me not say that all things are looking so good. This is Uhuru Highway, just there, the area near the Nyayo National Stadium. There is traffic. There is traffic, lots of traffic leading up to the roundabout that connects to Bunyala Road. I think that's for most of you who are trying to access probably the Central Business District. But Lang'ata Road looking fairly smooth, just a little bit of traffic when you're approaching the Madaraka roundabout. Not too bad though. But you know what? Basically, the roads are not looking too bad this morning, and we do hope that you will have an easy time on the roads this morning. Again, thank you as always for tuning in today for the Morning Cafe. We hope that you have learned a little bit about how to take care of your hair, keep it healthy, and not forgetting COVID 360. I think we had a lot of fun with that, just learning things that we did not know as far as facts concerning coronavirus is concerned. Thank you for watching. My name is Leangari. As always, it's a pleasure. Remember, the discussion does not end here. You can continue writing to us through our social media platforms. That is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and for keeping us company all through. My name is Leangari. Until tomorrow, same time, same place, God willing.